Clubhouse.
Jill, ask them what they think about supervillain.
That sounds better to me. More exciting.
Do you prefer saving America? How about saving the world?
Nope. It's saving America.
Welcome back to Pod Clubhouse's continuing coverage of the 4th season of The Boys. This is for the 7th episode called Inside Man. This is Paul here once again with my co-host, Kat. How are we doing today, Kat?
Doing good. How are you?
You sound better than the first podcast when
I know
you were very much adjusting to your environment. So, yeah. Sounds like you've adapted.
Yeah, I just thought about that, though, this week. I was like, oh, man, I remember when I felt, like, really horrible that first week. And I don't feel like that anymore, so it's good. Maybe all the Guinness helped.
Local medicine.
Yeah, local medicine.
All right, so this was a big, busy episode. I know that with so much happening in each season and only 8 episodes, there has to be a lot that happens in every episode, but there's been a couple that's maybe hasn't felt quite as full as this one did. You can tell that things are starting to spin up to the season conclusion and the series conclusion, with next season being the last one. But let's start with, I've got, let's see, maybe 5 different plot lines and main characters. Here's an easy one. Let's start with A-Train.
Ooh, A-Train.
Yes. So do you suppose that he is totally burned at this point? Like, you know, he came to the rescue, tried to give Ashley an out, which she rejected, even though she had asked for it. And then he zooms off. Do you suppose, like Maeve, this is potentially the last we see of A-Train?
I hope not, because that was kind of lame. Like, they built him up and he, out of all the heroes, has had sort of a really, I mean, besides the boys, I mean, and from the 7, have had and Homelander, of course, which is just going down a different path, but he's had a really, I guess, transformative arc from, you know, deciding who he wants to be, if he wants to be a good, bad, good. He's gone along with a lot of bad stuff, and then it seems like in this season he's finally coming to and just willing to put himself out there. And, you know, he knows the risk of, if Homelander finds out, that he'll definitely get killed. There's no redemption there. I mean, there's no, you know, forgiveness with Homelander.
No.
So he knows the risks, and he has done them anyway. And then in this one, where he, you know, with Deep and Noir, where he really kind of went for it and knew, like, what the stakes were. I liked that. And I was really, I mean, we'll get into it with the Deep, but I was really sad that he didn't die in that whole fight scene. It would have been, I was hoping that, like, A-Train was going to set it up for Annie, and then Annie was just going to have finally her redemption and just get, you know, it was going to be over, but then it wasn't. So that was kind of a letdown. And then when A-Train goes and, like, helps Ashley, I feel like that would have also been a really great moment for them to kind of, like, you know, finally just, like, leave and, you know, have their thing. But, like, I don't know. I just hope it's not a Maeve thing. I hope he comes back in the 5th season, because it would also just be a disservice to that character that I feel like has the most change, has had the most change. And I would be very disappointed if he doesn't come back.
I would hope to see him back also. I could understand needing to lay low.
Yeah.
Because he's out at this point. The situation with Noir and Deep was that they could knock them out, but they didn't know how to kill them. If you remember back to the very first season, there was that big effort to keep track of the vulnerabilities, the weaknesses that they could exploit against the Supes. And although that kind of aspect has died away, that was originally part of the boys' mission. And I guess they never got that far with the Deep. And they don't even know about this Noir.
This new Noir.
New Noir, right?
Yeah, that's a tongue twister. But there was a really nice moment between A-Train and Mother's Milk that I really thought that was really nice, you know, where both of them have kind of had, you know, their own journeys of, like, why are they doing this? And I feel like one of the questions in this season is also, like, the boys are essentially kind of thinking they're, like, on the good side, but they also know that they've done really horrible things. So they're like, are we really good? Is our mission really good? That kind of thing. Those are the questions. And then so I feel like also, is it worth giving up everything? Like, A-Train, his family doesn't like him because of what he's done, and and we've seen it, and he's like, what is my purpose? So he finally has like kind of found it and like trying to make up for what he's done. So, and then Mother's Milk is just like, is it worth the sacrifice? Panic attacks and everything. So I really like those questions they brought up and the conversation between them. But then I don't know, I hope he comes back so it doesn't just go all like, it wasn't worth it. It didn't really mean anything.
Yeah, or like one fight coming to the rescue doesn't quite solve all of his, as what his Black Widow puts it, red in his ledger.
Yeah.
Why do you suppose that Ashley opted to stay? Do you think it's like she just can't give up that little tiny amount of power that she has at Vought, or is there something I'm missing there?
I guess with Ashley, she's also done really horrible things, and maybe she wouldn't know what to do with herself outside of Vought. So she's just going to kind of go down with the ship because I feel like she can't give it up.
I didn't get the part about that she doesn't feel that she's not worthy of escape, but I did get the sense like she still thinks that she can find her own way through whatever is happening, even though she doesn't really have all the data.
Yeah, but kudos to her. I mean, she was willing to stay there and keep going.
Yeah, that's going to work out great. Although some other stuff did happen with other members of the Seven, I don't really have anything for them in specifically. I guess there was the bit with Deep and his octopus murder. But I kind of lost some interest in Deep this season as anything more than just, comic relief with, him and Noir with bro. It is funny. It does add a little bit of humor in episodes where things are getting pretty dark and serious. And of course, with the octopus having like several dying gasps.
Yeah. Tilda Swinton.
Yeah. She performed her part as well as anybody could have in that. Kevin. But overall, I just kind of lost interest in what the Deep was doing.
Yeah, no, me as well. I think, I don't know, it just feels like he's 2 seasons overdue. It's been too much. I feel like if there was a moment for him to go, it would have been a perfect moment, like I said earlier, just to do it in that fight scene. I feel like that would have been great. I wish Annie would have got her powers back and just like finished them then. It would have kind of been a hit. Then Noir could have just gone back instead of both of them doing that kind of like bro bit. And I love the actor Chase Crawford as the Deep, but I just feel like they're not really giving him anything since like the first season was just like what he did, like what his character did. It's just really hard to recover from that, like I don't know. It's just like the other people have like committed murders, which is funny to say, like, oh, his was a sexual assault, so it's like I don't know, it's ickier than murder, which is, I don't know if you can compare those. Both, all of them are horrible, but this is just in the fictional world. I don't know, it's weird, like you're never gonna let him let that go for good reason. And then it's not like A-Train, where like, I mean, he killed Huey's girlfriend, but it was like an accident. And I mean, he's killed a lot of other people and the Deep has well, but I don't know, they just feel very different. And I think it's because the Deep really hasn't had an arc either. Like A-Train's started to forgive and know like that he's done really horrible things, and the Deep has never relented in that. He's done fake forgiveness and like fake redemption,
which we have been wondering about the whole time, whether it was genuine. And then he admits to Annie, no, it wasn't. I never felt that way.
Yeah, so he does feel like sort of just like a one-note character, and I'm like, you're not giving us anything to go with, like I think maybe there's something going on with like not wanting to kill off that character, which I get,
Maybe they have Chase under contract for the run of the show,
which I mean, I do like him. I just wish they would give him more stuff to do.
At this point, since he is the only other surviving Seven member since the beginning of the show, I could almost see within the sensibility of the show that they do kill him, but it is completely meaningless and stupid.
Yeah.
Just Homelander
accidentally kills him.
Yeah, or just something just insignificant after lasting so long and going through these things, these hoops.
Yeah.
But ultimately, if he died that way, I wouldn't be totally surprised.
Yeah. That would be more fitting in the 5th season.
I do have some notes for Homelander and Ryan, but I want to come back to them.
Okay.
So let's flip over to the Frenchie Kimiko story. We were wondering if Frenchie was going to be the quote unquote inside man for the prison plot, which was an idea that you had in the last podcast with the political dissidents being sent off to internment camps, aka Tech Knight's family prisons. Would Frenchie be an asset inside the prison? But in this episode, they got him out to work on the virus. What do you think of that choice? Do you think that's less dramatic, or do you think that's just we kind of knew that was how it would wind up?
And maybe this is why people are having issues with this season. I know there's like other obvious reasons, but it's just season 4 is just starting to show that it's season 4. So like the Frenchie and Kimiko plot has felt that way, sort of like they're really fishing for some stuff. And it was just really, if it had been the other thing, like, maybe something with the plot of the prisons, okay, still a little bit far-fetched, but it wasn't that. And then the fact that like he went and did this thing to, have a big moment and like own up to his crimes, and then Billy just goes and be like, oh yeah, I just pulled some favors and he got out. It's sort of when you cry wolf, and like sometimes TV shows do that a lot, and if you do it one too many times, things that they start doing don't mean anything. And so I feel like that was one of those moments where I was like, oh, okay, that didn't mean anything, but they made it seem like it meant a lot in the last episode, so I was just like, okay.
Yeah,
of course.
There's that weird high wire act that TV has to walk with, not jerking the audience around, but still giving them something new and surprising.
It's hard to do.
It is. And I wonder if in the writers' rooms, if kind of insulated like they are, if they ever lose track of the difference between jerking us around and giving us something we haven't seen before.
Yeah. And in The Boys, like it's a little bit different where you kind of expect them to do those things. So I was like, oh, okay, yeah, of course, Frenchie is going to come out and like he's the druggie, he's going to like help the lab thing. Like I get why they did that. I just feel like they made it such a big deal for him to go into jail, and then it's just like pulls him right out. I don't know. I didn't like that fake.
Similarly, what did you think of Kimiko's story about why she doesn't talk? If I understand it correctly, it's that the kidnapping trafficking ring also had like a kind of a death match aspect to it. Then you weren't allowed to make a noise, even if you were cut or hurt. So the first time she killed somebody, she didn't talk and then never talked again.
Honestly, that little flashback felt so misplaced, like so out of place. Like we've never really, I mean, have we had a lot of flashbacks? Like I can't remember, but I don't know why it just felt all of a sudden, oh, like, have I told you the story of why I didn't talk? And then it just like kind of flashed to this like thing, and I was like, this is weird. Like they don't do this. And again, their story, Kimiko and Frenchie's, just feels very off this season. Like they don't know what to do with them, so they're just like kind of putting these things in there.
Yeah, well, that feeds into my last question about them, is that he comes out of prison and he's kind of sulky a little bit, but otherwise he seems fine for Frenchie, Not that he's fine like anyone that you might meet at the grocery store, but for Frenchie, he seems pretty normal.
Yeah, and wasn't he like dealing with like, what did he have been in drug withdrawals, and
there'd have been
like,
that. There'd have been,
he was grieving over
the
Colin the boyfriend
situation, the coming to grips with his dark past, and yes, he still feels like he's unforgivable, and then that's something that he and Kimiko say that they share, is that she feels unforgivable also, but at the same time, like you were alluding to, it feels like they just took a moment in their relationship, just a moment, and stretched it to be all season long.
Yes. Yep. It's feeling like Huey and Starlight did a season or two ago when they were just kind of stretching. Are they going to do it? Are they not going to be here, like be together and that sort of thing?
Mm-hmm.
But just in a weirder way. I don't know. It just, yeah, it just, and I hadn't even thought about the fact that, like, yeah, Frenchie came back normal and was like, yeah, I didn't want to come out, but I guess I'm just going to help this drug lord, like not even like second guessing it after he had just been tormented the whole season. And we're just supposed to be like, okay, cool. Like, I don't know. And I can go on a lot of like suspension of disbelief and like a lot of plot stuff doesn't have to make sense for me. It's TV, it's a show about superhero, like, satire, superheroes, whatever. But I don't know. With these characters, I just feel like we've gone this far and then it just, with them, they're kind of just throwing stuff at the wall, seeing what sticks now. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah, I mean, by the end of the episode, even though Kimiko gets her leg cut off, he has to cut her leg off.
Yeah.
He's in fairly good spirits, I guess, about having a problem to solve, with like with Samir and deciding to let him go, even though they know that Butcher would not be in favor of that. Yeah, it's just, I agree with you. It felt
Too convenient.
that's a good word. Speaking of Starlight and Huey, did you notice that they mentioned Starlighters? They keep mentioning Starlighters as this boogeyman presence. But Annie doesn't seem to be any part of it. Is this sort of like, I don't know what, like Live Strong existing after Lance Armstrong couldn't be a part of it anymore? What is this? Or is this just kind of a media spin creating that group that doesn't really exist, but giving a name to it anyway as a way to create an enemy?
Yeah, I think it's a combo of that. I think it's like the idea is stronger than the actual thing, and then people cling onto the idea and forget where you like. I bet there's a lot of in the show, like let's say these Starlighters are alluding to are doing things and not even knowing who Starlight is, technically, or like what she really represents. They're just kind of like piling on, and as people do, sort of just kind of go with the flow and not really know what the actual cause is sometimes.
That happens? What?
So I just feel like that's what that is. And then Annie has to sort of live with the consequences of something she did ultimately start for the good. But I wonder if she feels responsible because it's like, I also feel like she's just resigned to it too. Like I can't control that. It's not even necessarily the Starlighters. It's like what people think the Starlighters are.
Right.
I feel like she herself is facing like thinking like, what is it? Like, like her role in it. And then also being like, well, I can't stop that. Like we've seen her deal with that in the last couple of episodes.
I'm still trying to figure out what they are. Like,
Yeah.
Because without her, without the Starlight House and all that, who's coordinating it? Or is it just one of those media inventions?
I mean, it's Firecracker just saying stuff, and like we know that she's not telling, she's not exactly telling the truth. So it's sort of one of those. I think a lot of those little tidbits we get about the Starlighters here and Starlighters there, it's probably not true. Like there's probably no Starlighters doing whatever they're saying they are.
I think that's probably right. I think it's a way to give a name to the people that they don't like so that when they find them, they can say, well, you're a Starlighter, and then brand them that way and do whatever they're going to do with them.
I think so.
Remember last discussion about the failure of Annie's powers? Mm-hmm. I was having trouble citing precedent, and it was Spider-Man 2. If you remember, Tobey Maguire, his powers conveniently were very spotty during that movie, and it was sort of like because of, I don't know, emotional dissonance basically. And then once the plot needed him to have his powers back, then he did. And I guess with Annie, her powers that are missing are the Starlight powers. It seems like Soups at a certain level anyway all have strength and toughness. I wouldn't have expected Deep to be as tough to beat as he was, or tough to kill, since they don't know that they can kill him. And he took a big, like 45-pound weight to the face. That's a big deal. You take enough of those, that should kill you, even if you are super abled, as they say in the boys' world. But they don't think that will do it, so they got to run away. But that was something I just wanted to make sure that I brought up because we had tried to figure out what could be the situation with her powers. And conveniently, it also sort of meshes with what happens to Annie at the end with the shapeshifter, right?
Yeah.
Because if Annie can't access her powers anyway, I don't know if shapeshifters can. In like a lot of cases, they can't, or they don't get the full usage of the powers because they don't know how to use them. They know how to use shapeshifting, but they don't know how to, like in X-Men, Mystique.
Yeah.
She can imitate anyone, but she can't use their powers per se, not as effectively. Like she can pop Wolverine's claws, but she can't heal like Wolverine. And I think that's a carryover kind of paradigm for shapeshifters in most comic book worlds. Were you fooled at the end? Were you mouth agape like me, seeing that fake Annie had just had wild sex with Huey while real Annie was imprisoned?
At first I was like, oh, okay, like she's gonna embrace her, Starlight persona maybe and like do it, and then but it did feel a little bit odd. And then of course we got to the moment, but you brought up X-Men and Mystique, and I don't know about you, but this episode felt a little X-Men-y.
Okay.
And especially with the political stuff, like what was the one that had I think it was the Days of Future Past, right? The
one with Peter Dinklage?
Yes, because that was like a little bit of also politics, right? He was like
The very
the
first
secretary.
one, if you remember, the very first one had where Magneto had abducted a senator that was giving him problems and gave him powers so that he knew what it would feel like.
Yeah, it just, and then also I think I know they're pulling storylines from the present day or whatever, but like it felt more like in this episode, maybe because of the scenes and like the shapeshifter just automatically makes me think of Mystique, but like it felt like that because I think there was also bills and things like the president. I don't know if it was that first X-Men or what they all melt. I haven't seen them in a while, but like I remember there was just some politics behind it of like, obviously the soups versus humans and stuff.
Well, there's always been like a registration issue.
Yeah. That first X-Men with like Magneto and like, the concentration camps and stuff like that.
Right.
So,
yeah.
Yeah. I just feel the boys is pulling from present day stuff. It also felt like very X-Men-y in that way. More so in this episode for some reason. I don't know. Did you feel that at all?
We got the Mystique connection. I didn't necessarily get X-Men completely, but we have been making comparisons all along to the superiority of soups in this world and their sense of where they belong on kind of the food chain on beings on planet Earth. And we've been alluding to that being Magneto's case all along. And it's kind of interesting. And I mean, in recent years in comics, basically the X-Men line has very much agreed that Magneto had it right. And that if they can't live peaceably, then they should live separately from humans. And that's what they did for a very long time. But this isn't an X-Men podcast.
No, it isn't.
What did fake Annie get out of the safe at the end? Did you see what it was? I tried to freeze frame it because they had been dealing with the safe a little bit. Is that the...
Oh, in one of the earlier scenes, Huey had his computer and like a hard drive, and then that's what he put in the safe.
Oh, okay. So that's his Newman dirt.
Yes. He didn't delete it.
The mutually assured destruction.
Destruction, yep.
Okay. All right, let's flip over to the Butcher versus Kessler situation. I mean, we know, obviously, that Kessler is a creation within his head, a persona embodying basically his dark side, for lack of a better term. But he argues with that dark side, because I guess maybe the physical Butcher is all of his sides combined into one, and he's trying to sort out the best way to move forward with this constant nagging from his dark side, his Kessler. And he talks about the motivation for saving Ryan, whether it's faith in the boy or a promise to Becca. What do you think is really the driver there?
If we're going off the theme again, it's probably to forgive himself by doing some deed, whether it's selfish, whether it's for Becca, or I think it's more for himself to feel like he did something good for once. And not necessarily for Ryan's good. I think it's definitely selfish based.
And that's interesting because he can't really admit that to his Kessler
No.
self.
No. He doesn't have to save Ryan. He could have saved him earlier. He didn't really do it. And then I think it's like the guilt of like, you're going to die soon. So may as well just, he did want to do something good. And at least that's what I get, unless it's to get Ryan, because Kessler wants him to release the virus, like, make the virus and then release the virus and kill all the soups, including Ryan.
Mm-hmm.
And he's had those conversations with the Kessler side. So I wonder if like deep down Billy does also just want to get rid of him. That dark side of like fighting that voice of like, even though this is Becca's kid, you should get rid of him because it's Homelander's kid as well. And that's been his mission from day one, to get rid of Homelander.
I wonder why he hasn't registered that the virus would take him out too.
I think he knows that. I think he doesn't care because he's dying anyway.
I guess
Like,
that's a good point. Doesn't matter.
I think he knows it's a suicide mission regardless.
Did you notice that Becca has stopped appearing?
I have, actually, yeah. I was like, wow, he's just suppressed that part. So is that a sign to us to be like, oh, all hell is going to break loose in these last 2 episodes?
Yeah, well, we had been talking about the duality of the characters in the last podcast, and now if physical Butcher is the middle ground for his, for lack of a better phrase, but he's not hearing from his virtuous side anymore, then all he's got is middle and dark.
Yeah. He's given up on the really good side.
Yeah. So that doesn't bode well for his decisions in terms of having any balance. He passes out after saying that he still has faith in the kid after seeing how Ryan reacts to, that weird tell on your parents messaging on the Puppet Christmas show that he's on the Vought channel. But he also passes out after saying that bit to his Kessler side.
Yeah. He did give Ryan like the photo that, sent him a photo of the 3 of them together, like from a Christmas. And so I wonder if like he really does love Ryan in some way and cares about him, or is he manipulating him as Billy does, for his own mission? Because now we know he can't be trusted because he has these voices in his head. So
Yeah.
Even when he first took Ryan back in the last season, like, you thought he was doing out of the kindness of his heart, but then he treated Ryan like so horribly. So like, I'm still not convinced that he really cares about Ryan or that he's doing it for Becca. And now that Becca's not showing up, I don't know what his intentions are.
That's a good point, because we were wondering earlier in the season, does Butcher have the tools to make a genuine emotional case to this teenage boy to see it his way, to come around, to peaceably duck out on Homelander? When I asked you that, you said no. But we're seeing that with his health degrading, that the potential for him to rely on dirty tricks, like the picture, might come across as an emotional kind of argument, but it's probably leaning more into emotional manipulation.
Yeah, I mean, I was surprised when Billy admitted to the team that he actually had kidnapped Samir and amputated his leg, which I thought there would be a more of a like, wait, what? You did this, blah blah, and everyone's like, oh yeah, you amputated his leg, okay, like let's just make him
got over it pretty fast. Yeah,
yeah, and he's like, okay, he can make the virus, let's just give him what he needs, like,
yes.
like he wants his leg back,
They moved on and started assigning workers to help him without much.
Yeah, that was really like, okay, like that doesn't make any sense, but okay.
I find it interesting that Kessler can just disappear.
Mm-hmm.
That he's not always there. which makes me wonder if there's more to it than just being his dark side. If it is more tied up into either the tumor or however the V is manifesting in his body, if it's more complicated than just like a schizophrenic hallucination.
Unless it's just more practical, like, the actor can't be there all the time.
There's always that. All right, so that does leave us with Homelander and Ryan. I found that there was more in this episode, like we had seen in previous episodes, with the story wanting to treat Ryan as the individual and not as either a sidekick or a toady. He doesn't want to go along with the puppet show and that weird messaging from the puppets. But did you notice at the very end when he was looking into the camera, he said, "The truth is," and then he like shakes his head and then goes off camera. What do you suppose he was about to spill right then?
I wonder if he was going to say something about Homelander. He's been a character this season that kind of goes back and forth. And unlike the others, because he is a kid, I feel like I can let that one go.
Yeah.
Because you change your mind every 5 minutes when you're a kid.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it's a lot of emotional things that are happening. Like, obviously he killed his mom by accident. And then he was kind of with Grace for a bit, at Billy's like urging. And then he kind of like got away and didn't treat him really well. And then he went back to Homelander. And then Homelander's been like kind of treating him well, but also with the side of crazy. So that's a lot to deal with as a kid. So I can understand him going back and forth and like he's all in the Homelander thing. And then he's like, wait, what? Like, I think he has these moments. I don't know if it's sort of, what do they call it? Like kind of like a Stockholm syndrome where you're kind of like just.
You identify with your captor?
Yeah. But then like it feels like he snaps out of it in some ways. And it's weird that Billy knows the triggers for him, which is like that photo of like Becca.
Yeah.
And I wonder if it's also because like his trigger is Becca of being good. So he's like, maybe Ryan will see Becca in this photo and also think of that and his humanity instead of Homelander.
That's what got me wondering about what else he was saying on the air, which was about family. Family matters to him. But I couldn't suss out what he meant by family. Did he mean Homelander, or did he mean Billy, or did he mean just his mom? Or is it like you just said, he's a teenager and he doesn't even really know the extent of what he means? He knows that family's important to him, but his family situation is beyond confusing.
Yeah, I think he's still figuring out. But the scary thing is that, we've been kind of told that he's the only one that might be able to defeat Homelander, or Butcher's side wants to get him and either train him or kill him with the virus that they're making.
Yeah.
So they kind of have to tread carefully because it's like, what will he do? He doesn't know the extent of his powers yet. And Homelander doesn't know either. And obviously, if he tries to kill him, like, I don't think he can kill him. And Ryan took a stand there, too, because he knows that Homelander can have his moments of, like, he's seen him kill people. So he also took a risk there and be like, well, I'm going to oppose my dad and do this thing and okay that maybe the consequences of that. But maybe it's also him knowing, like, well, what is he going to do to me, The
business with Ryan and his uncertain power level, or at least developing power level, I wonder if that ties into what Sage was saying when she was getting fired. Because she says something about...
Oh, yes. I figure like, oh, you need me. Does she mean Ryan? Like, he's the only one that can kind of defeat you.
It does seem like maybe she meant himself, like in his own need for adoration as being like a gigantic disability for him. But on like a...
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking about superheroes here. So defeat usually comes in the form of like a physical situation. And this whole season has been building up to wondering if Ryan is that person that's capable of it. So I was wondering, I think it could go either way, but I was thinking Ryan.
It's weird that we haven't seen him really do anything with his power. So right now, we've seen him do it in the last season, the last couple of seasons, but it's like, we don't really know the extent now that he's grown a little bit more, what his powers are.
That's
I'm sure,
interesting, yeah.
and that's sure by design, obviously. So, like, I wonder if they're just saving that for season 5. But, like, we don't know what, like, is he exactly like Homelander, or is he more powerful? Like, what exactly is he capable of?
There's been so little spent on that I think I missed it. Why aren't they training him at Vought?
Why isn't Homelander training him? And I wonder if it's also because he doesn't want to know the full extent of his powers. Because he's dealing with his own mortality of, like, the white hairs and things like that, that maybe he doesn't want to see a better version of himself, which would be Ryan.
Because he does have that kind of mental, I don't know what you call it, complication introduced last season with Soldier Boy, and knowing that he's part offspring of Soldier Boy, but like he couldn't beat Soldier Boy just one-on-one. Soldier Boy couldn't beat him either, but it was an uncertain kind of thing whose power level would dominate. And so maybe finding, having your son, maybe it's just sort of like an extrapolation of that situation. And he's got the weight of how he was raised. So maybe he's got like how far is too far with a super kid and how to raise them to be a superhero. And he doesn't want his son to go through what he went through. I'm not sure if that was training or if they were just measuring his tolerances, with like the oven and the various things that they were talking about in that episode.
It's just strange that we haven't seen any of it.
Yeah, like the homeboy stuff and talking about him potentially joining the 7. He doesn't, like, how would they even know? They know that he can laser, but he doesn't seem to have very good control of it. They know that he has super strength, but he doesn't seem to have very good control of it. Going back to the X-Men, that was a school for gifted youngsters, meaning that was like a high school and prep school type age kids that were the original X-Men. All right, well, that pretty much covers kind of the questions that I had about the 7th episode. Did you have any discussion points that you wanted to toss around?
No, that's it.
All right. Well, that kind of jumps around a little bit in the plot and doesn't really cover like exact plot points, but does hopefully answer some lingering questions that viewers may have had following this episode and leading into episode 8, the finale. So if you enjoyed this podcast, please remember to rate, review, and subscribe to it on iTunes or Spotify or wherever you found it. If you have a comment, go to podclubhouse.com and leave a comment somewhere or a question either on this podcast or any post will generate a flag and I'll see it and I'll try to get an answer to you as quickly as possible. Thanks a lot.
Thank you for listening. This has been an original Pod Clubhouse production. Pod Clubhouse is a podcast network dedicated to encouraging collaboration among podcasters and friends to bring a fresh voice and diverse perspective on a wide array of content. Please visit and leave a comment for us at podclubhouse.com. Rate, review, and subscribe to our podcast feeds on Apple Podcasts. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. You can find us at Pod Clubhouse. Our DMs are always open, and we'd love to hear from you.
Pod Clubhouse.